Good evening, YouTubers. This is Demon0981, and I'm bringing you another video. Oh, and tonight we've come to the list of my top 15 fairy tales. Well, it's basically stories we've grown up with over the years, whether they be from the classical Brothers Grimm series, Hans Christian Andersen, maybe not Mother Goose, but somewhere around that line. But mostly stories is we have, excuse me again. Yeah. Basically stories that we have seen turned into movies, particularly those from Disney, or, and what, in FairyTale's case, DreamWorks. So, with that being said, I'm going to go over the top 15 fairy tales. But be warned, there will be some fairy tale stories because I'm going to dissect that I'm going to be going over their original depiction or variation and the family friendly / Disney-fied version. What the hell was that? So if you don't think I should do it, that's your opinion. But this is my video, I'm going to do it anyway. Now let's begin with number 15, which is a very old classic. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us out there know this one. And number 15, it's the Three Little Pigs. Now, we all know about this story. Three brother pigs go into the world to basically construct their own houses. One builds his house out of sticks, one out of straw, and the other one actually manages to build a typical brick house. And of course we know what happens next. The big bad wolf comes along, blows down on the first two brothers' houses, says, but can't manage to blow down the third one. No, this is where I have to do the dissection. Now, from all the versions we've seen on TV or the movie, where the big bad wolf goes down the chimney and ends up scalding or burning himself on the fire, or a big pile of water, shoots up out of the chimney and runs off into the distance, never to be seen again. That's the family-friendly version. Here is the original dark version. Now let's rewind to the wolf going down the chimney. The three pigs set up a huge pot of boiling water in the fireplace. The wolf climbs down, they slam the lid on the pot, boiling the wolf alive, basically turning him into wolf stew. Which the pigs tend to eat afterwards. Yeah, because he's so happy he now does it. And trust me, that's just one of them. And keep in mind, there are plenty of versions of the Three Little Pigs, not just the story itself, but and also the three characters. Of course, there's Shrek and Hoodwinked, And but there's two different version, or variations I can mention, and before moving on. There's the Disney classic shorts. It's yeah, it said shorts because there's three of them. There's the original story. There's one where the big bad wolf's three kids. Things are included. And there's one other one that somehow ties in a lie detector. Or slash wolf punishing machine. I don't know, I still don't get it. Now, oh, and there's the Looney Tunes the two Looney Tunes versions. Sorry, if for some odd reason I keep on forgetting. There's the Three Little Oops, which is a musical short, on how the Three Little Pigs are actually musicians, and the Big Bad Wolf wants to join their band. And of course, follows the original story. Well, not the original story, but the kid-friendly. You know what I mean. As well as Pigs and Polka, which is a Hungarian and polka themed version of the story. Whereas there's barely any dialogue, just Hungarian Rhapsody music. But there's one other version I forgot to mention. And I know this one, and because I've seen it before, I'm trying to remember which one it was. Give me 1 second. And I know which one I'm talking about too. Oh, because there's another fairy tale story that got the same treatment. Anyway, while I'm thinking about that one, in Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater, which actually used to be a very interesting TV series, in which live action and actors and celebrities now have portrayed its singers in their fairy tales. In the Three Little Pigs version, and you're not going to believe this, it starred Jeff Goldblum as the Big Bad Wolf. I know, get that around your head. And Billy Crystal as one of the Three Little Pigs. And guess which one? Now, where is it? I know. Let's run his, crap, looked on the wrong browser. There was another one too, but I can't remember which one that was. Because I think it had Michael Keaton and doing his Beetlejuice character as the wolf. If you know what I mean, Ian, please remind me which one it was. I don't remember. It was like some court case. Anyway, I'll get to that one. Get back to that one later. Or when I get to number 8. At number 14, it's Puss in Boots. Now, thanks to DreamWorks, we know who Puss in Boots is. Is the suave, swashbuckling cat with boots and a hat, as well as carrying an ipi, which is a fencing sword. But most of us probably have never heard of the actual story. Anyway, the story of Puss in Boots basically goes this. A man dies and leaves his three sons each with a gift, or as a parting gift. He gives his eldest son a windmill. Oh, I think. Yeah, that's what it was. Is the middle son a donkey? And of course, the third one, Puss. Now, where on earth was it? Oh, that's what. Okay, I found it. But when we get to number 8, I'll add on to it. But anyway, the third son and Puss go out over on their own, and he's not too happy that he gets a cat. That is a last gift from his dying father. If you want to know what I'm looking that way, sorry, I have to position myself at how my camera sees me. I am looking at my cat right now, sleeping on my bed. And so he decided to get rid of the cat. At which the cat finally starts speaking. And all he requests of his master is to purchase him a pair of boots, and that he will, in return, the cat will give him vast wealth. Now, if you've read the original story, there's a little scheme that goes on, in which the cat kind of cons the king into believing and that his master is a lord or something. And all I can remember is the name Carabas. And meanwhile, there's this vicious ogre, or that's able to shapeshift, and that basically rules over this territory. Puss wants for his master. Exactly how you think the Looney Tunes version. Oh, it's stop. Now, of course, we've all seen Shrek 2 and the other Shrek movies after that, as well as the spin-off of the movie Puss in Boots, where it definitely ties in a lot of fairy tale references, such as Jack and the Beanstalk, Humpty Dumpty, Little Boy Blue as a cameo, the goose that lays the golden eggs, that kind of stuff. But it's all set in Spain. Oh well, I guess that would make sense. That's where Puss's accent, seeing that he's played by Antonio Banderas. But the only gripe I have with this is simple. So let me get this straight. From the 4 or 5 Shrek movies, I'm counting the holiday specials as well, the only side character that's gotten his own spin-off movie is Puss in Boots. And not only did he get a spin-off movie, but he also got a spin-off series. He's on Netflix, as well as his own short. That's all good and all, but what about Donkey? I'm sure there's a fairy tale that revolves around him, that I've probably never heard of or read about. But I digress. Now let's go on to number 13, which is Cinderella. Now, seeing as the live-action remake of Cinderella is going to be hitting theaters this month, this year, or maybe this month, I'm pretty sure a lot of us know about this story. It's about a girl who's basically abused by her stepmother and stepsisters until it's the night of an elegant ball, which she's not allowed to go to thanks to her step relatives, and thus is given a visit by her fairy godmother, who gives her an elegant and ball gown, as well as the token and glass slippers. And say it with me, at the stroke of midnight she will go back to normal. Oh. And she leaves a glass slipper at the ball. Oh. Now, there are two versions of the story I can go over. Seeing as this is a Brothers Grimm original story, I will say this. I'm glad they didn't go with the original ending. If you want to know what I mean, well, put it out this way. There's a manga series is about a little doll that's actually lived within each of these stories. And she tells her owner these stories down to the grimmest detail. Basically, the stepmother tries to get her daughter's feet to fit into this glass slipper by God damn, how on earth am I going to explain this? Okay, one stepdaughter, she chops off the toes in order to get her foot to fit in the shoe. Of course it doesn't. And with the other one, she goes above and beyond that. She bounds her feet or something like that in order to get it to fit. And surprisingly it works. But apparently Cinderella was snubbed the prince during the ball that night, and instead of wanting to marry her, the prince has the stepmother and stepdaughter is taken away, being sentenced to the dungeon, where Cinderella gets off scot-free. Again, that's one of the original endings to the story. And speaking of Disney-based stories, number 12 is The Little Mermaid. Now, I don't have to explain this one, and I hope not. We've basically seen it, and we've seen the sequels and prequel. Oh, basically, let me go down onto the ending. Being split. Now, of course, we know Oni and Ariel and Prince Eric married, being happily ever after and all that. But in Hans Christian Andersen's original depiction of the story, I mean, the deal between the sea witch and the mermaid princess is not only is she not allowed to speak during the time that she's human, but she has her her oops, I think I made a slip. What I meant to say was she had her tongue cut out. But in the end, the sea witch does what Ursula did in the movie. She turned into a human herself and seduces the prince and ends up marrying him. Whereas the mermaid herself, out of heartbreak, and dies and becomes sea foam. I know. But, okay, on the bright side, you have this. There was a Grip and Adventures of Billy and Mandy episode that kind of did a little parody of this. I said, well, I was parodizing another popular 80s cartoon I'm still not aware of. All I know is that it was like the aquatic version of the Smurfs. Anyway, number 11. In the story of Rapunzel, or as we know in the Disney universe, Tangled. And for those of us who have seen Tangled, we basically know how the synopsis of the story works. But again, the grandbrother's version in the story goes like this. As when the witch who imprisons Rapunzel in the tower finds out about this little affair she's been having with the prince, she cuts off her hand, sends her away. He basically tricks the prince into climbing up Rapunzel's hair, thinking that it's her. Power into a thorn patch, blinding him. And where afterwards, he spends most of his years looking for Rapunzel, blind, by the way, until, he meets up with her, and, get this, they're to the desert. Rapunzel cries over the prince's face, and his vision is brought back to normal. Well, again, that's the original story. Now to talk about one that not a lot of us know about or remember. But we've all heard this term before. Number 10 is the wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, if you don't know what I mean by the term, a wolf in sheep's clothing is someone who acts all nice, but is actually a monster, or in truth and reality. And let's just say there are quite a number of people that fit that description, and I can possibly mention. Basically, the story is this. The wolf sees a flock of sheep But there's a guard dog protecting them. Yeah, it's kind of like how that one series of Looney Tunes shorts. It's gross where there's a wolf and a dog. They kind of go Tom and Jerry on one another. Basically, the wolf disguises itself as a sheep in order to actually get a sheep. But in the end, it's mistaken. Taken as a sheep and is killed. As a result. Now I don't know if there's a kid-friendly version of the story, but that's one of the endings. Now on to number 9, which a lot of us have probably have a hard time pronouncing, and leads to a lot of confusion within the last Shrek movie. It being Rumpelstiltskin. I hope I said that right. Basically, the synopsis of the story is this. A miller and his daughter go to see the king. The miller tells the king that his daughter has the ability to spin straw into gold. Well, impressed by this lie, he locks her up in a room filled with straw, and demands that she spin it all into gold by the next day. If she does, he would marry her. But if she didn't, and by then, he would have her executed. That night she cries because there's no human way that someone can spin straw into gold. And so we get our title character. Says he'll do it at a price. Which is small. Being some form of jewelry. Basically, this continues for about 2 nights. But on the 3rd night, we all know the deal. If he spent the straw in the gold one last time, she must promise to give him her firstborn child when she becomes queen. Now when the day finally comes, she doesn't want to hold her end of the bargain, which is justified by the way no mother would want and to have someone their child, especially their firstborn, unless it was a certain situation. And having pity on her, he poses a riddle. Guess my name 3 times and you can keep your child. And if you don't, it's mine. So she tries to come up with 3 new names, all of which are wrong. Maybe it was like 3 days to guess his name. Anyway, that's one version. And all the stories are kind of the same. She finds out the weird man's name by having someone from the palace listen to him while he's in the woods and singing to himself. She announces his name, and in a fit of rage, he stomps 1 foot into the ground and basically tears himself in half. Again, we've seen in the last Shrek movie where Rumpelstiltskin kind of did and these weird deals. I kind of like the character. He's a little funny yet weird. But there was also a Courage the Cowardly Dog episode that kind of satirized the story by having Muriel's uncle being Rumpelstiltskin or Kiltskin, and who forces her to make kilts. Which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically a Scottish version of a skirt, which is worn by both men and women, and in Scotland. Now on to number 8, which is Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This one is a real classic, along with the Three Little Pigs, mostly because it teaches a moral lesson. Never enter a stranger's home, no matter who they are, and whether or not they're home. Because, as in the story, Goldilocks basically intrudes upon the Three Bears' house while they're away. Now, while in the end of the kid-friendly version, she gets off scot. She learns a lesson and gets out of it unharmed. But there's one version of the story in which the bears actually kill her, or once they return. Now, I mentioned in number 15 that there was a version of the Three Little Pigs I forgot about, that I couldn't see, well, that I remembered, but I couldn't remember what version it was. And I have found it. And this ties into, well, this one. This entry as well, because there were 2 FairyTale Stories that were modified by this person. Filmmaker John Clark Matthews, who basically did stop motion animation for children's stories such as The Adventures of Frog and Toad, Uncle Elephant, and Stanley and the Dinosaurs, I think it was, as well as doing 2 fairy tale versions of the story of certain stories. Yeah. One was Goldilocks and the Three Bears sing their little bitty hearts out, and there was one about the Three Little Pigs. And if I can find it right. And you can actually check these out on johnclarkmatthews.com. Oh, that's what I meant to say, Runaway Ralph. Yep. The Three Little Pigs sing a jig. Now, keep in mind, these are really old stop motion and features, so they can look a little wonky at times. But I found them pretty entertaining in growing up. Now, there are various versions of Goldilocks and Three Bears, including one called Roald Dahl's Rotten Rhymes. And surprisingly, Roald Dahl, the same person who gave us Matilda, Willy Wonka, the Twits, the Witches, is made this. Did little shorts based on these. As well as some variations in Looney Tunes. Now on to number 7. This one is definitely a big and classic, especially if you want to teach little kids a lesson in honesty. That being The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Now, we've all heard of this story, especially since it has the moral of do not lie. As the shepherd boy, it cries wolf more than 3 times where there was no wolf. And in the end, and the wolf comes along and eats the sheep. Or there's the other version of the story where not only does the wolf eat the sheep, but also eats the boy. Now I bring up this story because, like with a few of these tales I've mentioned, and I have one little thing I gotta say, and I should have brought this one up beforehand. Jim Henson and its Muppet Classic Theater actually did several stories, that I've mentioned so far, such as The Three Little Pigs, Rumpelstiltskin, and The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Actually, I think that's the last one and I mentioned from it. And where Gonzo plays the boy. But anyway, the lesson of the story is do not lie. And now on to number 6, which is Hansel and Gretel. Now I don't quite know what's the moral of this story. I think it has something to do with remember, maybe you remember, or how to get home if you were stranded in the woods, or basically never take candy from strangers. I don't know, probably it fits. But anyway, we've all heard of the story of Hansel and Gretel. Two kids that are lost in the woods and come across this gingerbread house that's owned by a witch. Not just a witch, but a cannibalistic witch. And basically wants to fatten up Hansel and Gretel in order to eat them. Of course, in the end, and the kids do her in by stuffing her into her own oven and roasting her alive. That's both the kid version and the original version. Now, there are different variations of the story, and I can mention. There's a version of the story from Tiny Toon Adventures. There's where Buster and Babs have come across this house made entirely out of carrot cake. Yeah, go figure. But basically that one paradises another Looney Tunes short done by Bugs Bunny, which is our first the appearance of Witch Hazel. Like I've mentioned before, is voiced by June Foray. But not nowadays. Is in which the story kind of crosses over between in Hansel and Gretel and Snow White in one point of the story, or the short. But basically it's kind of funny in that way. And I love the fact that Hoodwink to put Hansel and Gretel as the villains. I mean, that's a lot that's into certain heroes. Never trust little kids. And you never know if they're going to be good or evil. And speaking of Snow White, number 4, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, we've all heard of this story. Those of us who've been to Comic-Con have definitely heard it from the voice actors. There's, in fact, I will say this though, in the San Diego Comic-Con in videos, I've found only 2 fairy tales told by the voice actors, Cinderella and Snow White. Both of which are very entertaining depending on the voice actors who are doing certain roles. My favorites being the Snow White reading done by a Steve Blum. I can't remember the other ones. The guy who does the voice of Nerval from the new Garfield series and Chester from the Fairly Odd Parents, as well as the other one with Rob Paulson, Tara Strong, and I think it was April Winchell or something. But anyway, we know the story very well. Especially since it was the first animated film Disney ever did. And it's become a cult classic, seeing as it has 2 recent remakes that were made during the same time, but were given different titles. But allow me to go over the original version of the story. The evil queen and doesn't just go for the poison apple motif as soon as she finds out that her huntsman failed or cut out Snow White's heart. But she tries 2 other schemes first. One was with the poisoned comb, and the other was with a tightening corset. I think that's what it was. Oh wait, hair ribbons, sorry. And then it was the apple. Now, of course, after there's Snow White, and it's brought back to life from the print, and says, kiss. Yes, the evil queen is punished, as in the original story, by being forced to wear iron shoes for the rest of her life. Well, as in the Disney version, we all know, as she's about to crush the dwarves under a huge boulder, a bolt of lightning strikes at her feet, causing the cliff she's on to crumble, thus causing her to fall as well as the boulder, or right after her. Iron shoes or death by falling in, being smashed to a pulp by a boulder. It kind of did, even to me. Now on to number 5, which is pretty interesting. And then I think about it. Oh, and going back to Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater, they did a version of Snow White. where they had Vincent Price do his portrayal of the magic mirror. Now, how's that for something? Anyway, let's get back to the topic of number 4, which is the Frog Prince. Now, going back to the fairy tale theater business, this was their first episode, and it actually starred Robin Williams as the Frog Prince. Now, seeing as Disney basically made the story of the Frog Prince as mostly about the prince being turned into a frog by the Shadow Man instead of the witch's curse. It's kind of dead even in my book. As well as one of the ways he can be brought back to normal. Now, we all know from the Disney version and the family versions, the prince is turned back to normal when he's kissed by the princess. But in the original Grimm Brothers story, he's turned back into a prince when the princess flings him at a wall. How was that for an ending? I have no idea what just happened. Now for number 3, which is Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, I will say this though, I love this story for what it's worth because of the various parodies and satires around it. But it's a pretty classical fairy tale. As we all know, there's a boy named Jack who's kind of a dunce and sells the family cow for a handful of magic beans, which grows into a giant beanstalk by the next morning, and during which afterwards he climbs up to discover a giant castle. And he brings back with him a hen that lays golden eggs, a magic singing harp, and I think there's one more item. No, I don't think there was. But that has to deal with the giant. Now, in most of the variations of the story, the giant is pretty much normal. But there are 2 versions of the story I like most of all. One of them being in the Disney short Mickey and the Beanstalk, where Mickey, Donald, and Goofy pose as Jack in the story, and we are introduced to Willie the Giant, who's able to shapeshift into anything he can and or will want to. But mostly I like this version from Disney's Fun and Fancy Free, where it was narrated by the late great ventriloquist Edgar Bergen. Now, the second variation of Jack and the Beanstalk that I personally liked the best was Jack the Giant Slayer. This was supposed to be like somewhat of a pseudo sequel to the original story, where even though there's beanstalk that grows up into the sky, there's not just one giant, but a whole army of them. I mean, I like how the head giant has 2 heads. In fact, this story it brought on a very interesting and dynamic. It, as one of the seasons of Face Off did a challenge based around it. And to see who can come up with the best interpretation of a giant, and from Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, if you're not aware what Face Off is, it's a show on Sci-Fi where about 14 makeup artists compete against one another to see who will win. And the challenges that they are given are very creative, and the results are not too disappointing at some points. But let's move on to number 2. And this is one story I am not thrilled to talk about. Oh, it does have the lesson of don't talk to strangers, but at the same time it's got some very disturbing and dark hidden messages within it. That being Red Riding Hood. Now, we've all heard about this story. We all know all about the kid-friendly version of it, and how little Red Riding Hood and her grandma would get out of that alive. I say that because one of the different versions of the story basically ends like this. After the wolf gets to Grandma's house first, he kills her and cooks her up. When Little Red Riding Hood appears, while in disguise, he feeds Red her grandmother's roasted flesh and her blood, calling it wine. And before he eats her, he asks Red to remove her clothes. Goes and get into bed with him. Now, stop. Oh, I know what you're all thinking. Okay, that's enough. If I don't want to hear more about this. Trust me, you kind of do. Because this ties along to one of the biggest taboos out there. Like, 2 of the biggest. Pedophilia and bestiality. Yeah, and I've actually found out about these secret as from the original story when I got a book from the library called The Anointed and Collection of Grimm's Fairy Tales, and where they explain in detail about each story. Now, like I said before with Into the Woods and my other villain song, in my non-Disney villain song on lists, the Red Riding Hood portion of Into the Woods may seem cute and harmless, but it is until we're introduced to the wolf. Often his song, Hello Little Girl. Oh, I mean the Broadway version, not the most recent and to theaters version, and then has Johnny Depp as the wolf. That I would actually like to see. For some odd reason, I couldn't even expected it. But anyway, what are you doing? But anyway, there are different variations of the story, and come what may. Tex Avery, he did a version of the Red Riding Hood, and then Cinderella with one character in mind. And Looney Tunes has done a few versions of the story. Yeah, I think there was a Disney short. But anyway, let's move on. And to our number one spot, which is entitled The Soldier and Death. Now, in the 1980s, there was a production by Disney, no, not Disney, Jim Henson, called The Storyteller, which kind of like showing devolves fairy tale theater, or was a sort of live action and portrayal of certain fairy tales or Grimm Brothers stories. And The Soldier and Death was their first episode, and probably one of their best ones in my opinion. Mostly because it tells the tale of a soldier returning from a war, and is given two gifts. A deck of cards that will always be in his favor, meaning he'll win in any game he plays with it. And as well as a seemingly ordinary sack. And he's, well, by order of the Tsar, by the way, this takes place in Russia, he's given a challenge to basically flesh out an army of devils from this castle. Oh wait, that wasn't it at all. That's a different story. Hey, scratch that. The soldier enters this abandoned and castle, I think it was, is where he's confronted by a legion of devil-like imps. And he basically plays a game of cards with them, in which he wins all and multiple barrels of gold, and to put an end to it, he teleports them again into his sack, which, kind of like a black hole, sucks up all of the devils. And after roughhousing them for a bit, he releases them back to hell, but all except for one, in which he snaps the foot off. And in return for his foot, the one-legged devil promises to do whatever the soldier tells him to do. So then the soldier marries the Tsar's daughter. But soon afterwards, the Tsar becomes gravely ill. No, I'm doing it the wrong way. Okay, the soldier, her son falls gravely ill, and the soldier calls upon the devil or he released, who presents him with a magic glass. That actually allows him to see death. Now, what Jim Henson did in order to portray death is both eerie and kind of whimsical in a way. Instead of just being like the Grim Reaper, or a typical skeleton in a black robe, well, we are given this small, yet large-eyed creature that kind of looks like a pitiful version of Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and of course in a black robe. And the devil tells him, if death appears at the dying one's head, and I think it was, if death appears at the head of the bed, and then the one in the bed is going to die. And if he's at the foot of the bed, they'll live. And as long as he sprinkles water on the body. Again, I might be mixing this up a bit, because I don't really remember that much about it. Then the Tsar gets sick, and in this time, and the death is at the dead part of the bed, I guess I should say it. So basically, the soldier makes a compromise with death by begging him and the entity to take him instead. Basically tricking death into getting inside the sack. And which he proceeds to hang upon the highest tree he can climb, thus rendering the world deathless. Meaning no one can die. At first, this is a miracle because those who are sick cannot die. And everyone in the world is basically immortal as long as death is captive. But then it starts getting remorseful and gloomy, seeing as the people who want a death to come for them cannot pass on. And this is where it gets really bad. And as the soldier goes back to the tree where he hung death and releases it, and back, all is returned to normal except for the sad fact that the soldier, although he released death, can never die. Death will not come for him. Even when it's his time, and he goes up to the gates of heaven where he is not allowed to pass through. Unless he brings 100 souls from hell into heaven. He does this, but is still not rewarded with death, and instead is cursed to wander the earth waiting for death to claim him. Now, I will admit, when I first heard this story, mean, it did kind of break my heart in a way. Sure, the soldier captured Death and held it hostage, and as well as tricked it, but he was doing it to save the life of a family member, particularly his father-in-law, or his son. And if you're in his shoes, don't tell me you wouldn't do the same. And I would understand if Death was a little cross. But to hold a grudge that long is kind of silly. Well, anyway, I'd like to thank you all for putting up with this within the last hour or so. Oh, but I will say this. Since Tuesday, Tuesday this week is St. Patrick's Day, I'm going to liven things up a bit. By doing a video entirely dedicated to Irish folklore, or legends, such as the Banshee, the Banshee, the Neckolovi, and of course, leprechauns. With that being said, I will see you all in the next video. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe to my channel. Oh, you can catch my reviews, news lists, and specials. Those on my channel, and by all means, leave a suggestion on what you want me to go over or in my next videos. Till then, this is Demo at 1 saying good night.